Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking About Survivor. I'm Christiana Ellis,
I'm Mike Mateen.
and we are here tonight to talk about the big finale of Survivor Season 40 Winners at War. And we finally have the winner among winners to talk about, and a lot of other things happened in this big episode. So we're going to talk about it. So, just jumping right in, what were your feelings about the big finale?
I mean, I really enjoyed it. I think it was a fitting end to this, season. I think everybody played reasonably well. I mean, there were some strange decisions, but ultimately, I mean, I think we talked about it. If they weren't going to get rid of Tony, he was going to win,
Yeah, I mean, we were saying that a month ago.
right? And they just this is what happens. They let him stick around, and then you get into like that just weird spot there at the end where it just becomes like more and more difficult to get him
Hmm.
because either he's coming down and he's having to use idols, or he's can win immunity because there's less people to compete against, or you know the numbers aren't falling the right way for you. Like there's just so many different reasons that kind of play into this, that's why you just should have taken care of it when you knew it was the big threat.
Yeah.
But he was deserving. I mean, he played his heart out on this season, and and he got there, and I think that it was great to see him win. I think that Natalie did the best she could have and made the best case she could have
Hmm.
coming back. Maybe the only thing that she could have done is like elected to compete in the fire making, because I think that's what Chris did when he won coming back.
Yeah, it is, and obviously, like Rob specifically singled that decision out as like implying that maybe he would have voted for her to win if she had done that. But I mean, I think I've got, she had to be doing the calculus in her head that, like, well, maybe she thinks she can win anyway, and why would she risk losing the fire making challenge? Imagine if she lost that challenge and felt like she would have had enough votes anyway.
Right, and I agreed with her rationale. I mean, I liked where she basically it's decided that she was going to make the case that she came in and dismantled their entire alliance
Mm-hmm.
for as soon as she got back. And had she not taken the final person out, that wouldn't have been the case. I get it, and that's why I say I think reasonably she did the best she could have, and that's why she earned the votes. I guess I get why. I mean, why Michelle didn't get any votes, but she certainly proved herself as a worthy Survivor
Yeah,
player.
I agree, and I think that let me come back to that for a moment. I just want to revisit that the last couple of weeks. We had the discussion of like, do we think anyone coming from Edge of Extinction could win in this season, right? Um, and my kind of feeling generally was that I didn't think so. And what I want to say about that is not I told you so, but rather the contrast of she came pretty close to persuading me if Tony wasn't such a strong player that we had been saying for a month that he deserved to win if he could get to the end. Uh, like she almost persuaded me. I would not have been upset, I think, if she had won.
Yeah,
So,
like if Ben had been sitting there,
mm-hmm.
if it had been Ben, Michelle, and her, that's different. Even Sarah, as well as Sarah was playing, because she had to make the overcome the
Mm-hmm.
being in Tony's shadow, even though she really wasn't. She just was perceived that way.
Well, I had some complicated feelings about that because, on the one hand, I liked Sarah, and I feel like I liked her even more after the finale than before. Not that I disliked her before, but I couldn't help but feel a couple of times in the episode that it's like, Sarah, I agree with the larger abstract points that you're making, and I think you are onto something, and all of these things are true. But in your specific circumstance, there are some other factors at play that you are not really acknowledging when you describe the situation.
Oh, like when she like particularly made it because she was a woman,
Well,
or
I
because I
mean,
think that
like,
is part of it, but I don't think that is the. I don't
right.
think that
Like,
is the
I
only
think that
part of it.
she's absolutely right about the broader trends. And I think it's also true that she probably got less credit than she deserved for that reason. But for
Agreed.
example, one of the times she's talking about that speech and getting so frustrated with Tony about saying, "Come on, just trust me for once," I'm thinking like, "But we know you're wrong
Yeah, I remember
on
that
this
one too.
specific
Yeah.
point." You know, it's kind of like just the context of the specific situation wasn't really supportive of the broader point she was trying to make, even if in the broader scheme of things it is true. And so that's why it was just a little bit awkward, because it felt almost like reality was undermining her, which is a shame because I actually agree with her argument in general. So,
Yes, exactly. So I think you're right when you say it was complicated because I'm in the same boat. I agree with her argument. I agree that she's getting less credit because of that.
mm-hmm.
But to your point, it really complicated it because he was the one that was right in what they should have done
Yeah.
in this in this exact one instance,
Mm-hmm.
and you could see why she wouldn't. But to be so determined, it just proved that you can't be that determined in this situation because you don't know. Like that's you're both, either of you is guessing, so
Mm-hmm.
you can't say I'm 100% right and he's 100% wrong, and he's just not listening to me because that wasn't true.
Yeah. And I mean,
So
the thing is, too, that there's, I think, even a broader gender dynamic thing at play there that is just kind of another ingredient in the overall stew, which is to say, I think she's absolutely right that if you had a 100% equal partnership where one partner is a man and one partner is a woman, I think it is true that a lot of people just subconsciously give more credit to the man as a result, which is
yep,
not fair. And she's 100% right about that point. But I
yes,
think that there is also an additional layer of the dynamic between the two of them, which is that he's the big flashy one and she's the more calm and reserved one. And so, to a large extent, maybe he absolutely needed that, right? Like to keep him from spinning off into crazy paranoia too often, he needed her to be his rock a little bit. And that was an important part of how they functioned as a partnership. And it's could be that it was very important that she was there for him to be able to play the kind of game that he did. I think all of that's probably true, but it just means that it also has an extra layer of people are more likely to pay attention to the big flashy one than the calmer, cooler one.
yep,
So, and I think that that was on top of the gender thing, addressing their specific personalities and play styles. You know,
yep,
so all of those things played into it, but all of it also just coming into play, highlighted because apparently the jury was watching the same tribal councils we were, which meant that they were seeing how obvious it was that Tony was controlling everything and just dominating everything. Which is again, it's kind of like doing that with her help, but he's the one who's out in front. Like she's helping him do it is the way it looks to everyone else, as opposed to, you know, uh, and again, it's like I don't want to like harp on Sarah and say, oh well, but what you should have done, because I think that there's an element where she's right, that people just are not seeing it because they're so used to seeing things under a different lens.
right, and yeah, and it's always going to be one of the trickier parts, when you play the game the way that she did. I mean, she was super stealth in this game. I mean, and it's what made watching it from home. We really respected what she did. Like again, like that Jedi mind trick she played on Ben to get him to like do what they wanted him to do.
Mm-hmm.
When he was the one that was so determined to do the other thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not her helping Tony. Like that was all her. But because it's so subtle, like Ben isn't going to sit there on the jury and say, oh well, Sarah, tricked me into doing this, because it's not the same kind of gameplay as like what Tony's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean she can't make that argument, but she does have to make a different argument.
Yeah.
And And I get her frustration because you're right. And especially probably coming from the field that she's in. I mean, this is probably something she deals with a lot because
Yeah.
she's obviously really smart and really competent and
Mm-hmm.
really talented. And she probably is as a police officer as well and probably encounters a lot of this. And so
Yeah.
there's a spillover effect from that doesn't make it any less real, but it adds to her frustration. And like you said, the lens that she's looking at it through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like just another thing with Sarah and Ben this time is, of course, that not that I think Ben was likely to win, but it was to Sarah that he decided that he was going to essentially like give his blessing that if she wanted to vote him out, he wouldn't hold it against her.
Right.
Which was like a little bit of a complicating thing where he's kind of like saying, "Well, I'm not asking you to vote me out. I'm just saying like I wouldn't be mad. I'm kind of sort of saying that you should, but if you don't want to, that's okay." And I'll keep fighting, but and at a certain point it was just kind of like, well, I mean, she kind of has to now.
Yeah, basically, he was never going to quit, but he certainly wanted to. He
Yeah.
was done. He was done playing. He was done with all of this. Like he just
Mhm.
didn't want any more. If he
Yeah.
hadn't gotten voted out, he would have kept playing hard.
Mhm.
But he would, he definitely wanted to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is too, I think it was a little bit like with Sandra where he was just saying, I'm exhausted and I feel like now having gotten a window into what the jury's thinking and just assessing my own game with clarity, I feel like I I'm not going to win. I might not even get any votes, and do I want to put myself through that experience only to not get any votes and be embarrassed?
Right, and it says something to how difficult the last 3 of the 39 days have got to be,
Mhm.
mentally,
Yeah.
because of all of that, the mental gymnastics you have to go through as to who might be voting for you. How do you make this argument? How do you make sure that you're sitting there at the end? How do you try to win these like crazy ass, either long drawn out endurance challenges or puzzles or
Mhm.
win against fire? Like the stress that he knows he was about to be under for the next 3 to 5 days or whatever it was going to be at that point
Mhm.
versus his odds of winning. And he was just
Mhm.
like, no thanks, man. No thanks.
Well, and
Like,
and on top of that too, though, the stress of however long it is between when they finish filming and the actual announcement of the
oh yeah,
winner.
if you do actually make it to the final three and the stress of like whether or not you might actually have won. Yeah.
Yeah, or sitting there feeling like I know that I didn't get any votes and I have to just sit here and wait to get that confirmed for me.
Right.
Yeah, like
Which I think that basically that was, I think I read an interview with Michelle and she wasn't like that explicit, but I think that was kind of where she was at,
yeah.
you
Um
know. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I want to jump back to that because I kind of skipped us back to Natalie for a moment when you had just talked about Michelle. I tend to agree. I was a little disappointed that she didn't get any votes because I felt like like I don't know who specifically should have voted for her. It doesn't really work like that, but I did just feel a little bit like, although I certainly would have ranked them, Tony, Natalie, Michelle. I think Michelle played a hell of a game, especially in this finale,
Hmm.
and made the best of, as she put it, kind of having to be constantly scrambling, constantly working against the numbers every time, and just, having to do whatever she can to stay in it and succeeding in that endeavor, you know? Even if ultimately it wasn't quite as showy as what Tony or Natalie did, I thought, she deserved to be there at the end. And it's a little bit sad to get there and not get any votes.
Yep. So I I saw in her interview that she though, and I'm surprised. I mean, I guess she wouldn't. It would have been hard to know this in episode,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to make the case for yourself at the tribal council. But she is the only player to have played multiple seasons, obviously, and never been voted out.
She's the only one?
Yep, because everyone else has played has either been, if they've, anybody who's made it to the end twice has also played a third season where they got voted out before getting to the end.
Ah, interesting.
Yep, she's never been voted out of the game.
That's a feather in her cap
Yeah,
for sure. You know, especially given that this one was the Winners at War season.
right. Yeah, exactly. It's not like she didn't. She did that in a difficult season for
Mm-hmm.
her second season.
Yeah,
So yeah, she's played whatever it is, 78 days, and she's never been voted out of Survivor.
pretty
Only
good.
person. Yeah,
But then
other people
again,
have waited that many days without votes or whatever.
right.
But yeah, everybody else either in their one of their other times playing, they were voted out at some point.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately for her, though, if she wanted to start getting into records like that, having Tony be able to say, yeah, but nobody even ever voted for me to leave. How did that happen? That's bonkers, right? I
That's
mean,
true. Well, I
yeah,
mean, and she,
they said that in the final tribal, I think.
yeah,
And
because I'm looking at the votes right now. I mean, it's 100% correct, but to her credit, I mean, she only really came on the radar there at the end when they started
mhm,
trying to turn on everybody. So she didn't get that many votes either.
yeah.
She got one, two, three. She only got four votes the whole season.
I mean, yeah. So I think we're agreed. She played an excellent game, but she was up against some of the best. So um, in that I think she performed with distinction and she deserves accolades as a result. Which is why again it just feels a little bit like a bummer to not get any votes because that makes it seem like she somehow just got dragged along, but when we know that's really not true, you
Right.
sort of feel like if she had even gotten just one vote, that would have softened it a little bit. But oh well.
Yeah, no, yeah. I guess you're right. I hadn't thought about that. It it would have been nice for somebody to have that kind of like awareness. That like the person who gets no votes is usually looked at as like the third wheel in the
Yeah.
final tribal council.
Especially
And
since, like, part of her narrative this season was that she is regarded in some circles as a controversial winner.
right. So
I
if
mean,
just somebody could have been like, "Hey, I know you're not going to win, but I think you deserve a vote because you are not a controversial winner. Like you did a good job." So,
I'm
but
actually just let's see.
who would that have been? I don't know. You're like you said, it's hard to say who should have done that. Yeah.
Mhm. I'm trying to just I'm like thinking in my head, like trying to remember what how did we feel about her win when she won? I don't remember. I didn't look it out. Oh, okay. I actually just pulled up my notes from the Survivor Kaorong finale, and I have Michelle wins in parentheses. What? I liked her. I'm not heartbroken, but it seems to me like Aubrey's game was stronger. And I think part of that was just coming from me liking Aubrey and wanting her to win.
That's right. Which one did she win?
Kaorong, which I don't have right here in my notes which
Yeah,
number
I
that
don't
was,
know.
but yeah, but it was down to her and Aubrey to win, and I was definitely an Aubrey fan. Um,
Yep.
uh, but yeah, so was this? Yeah, she was this a brains brawn beauty thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was on the beauty, and Aubrey was on the brains.
yeah. So in any event, yeah, I liked Michelle more and more. I you know I think she did great, and so I kind of in my heart I wish that she had gotten at least one vote just so that it would have softened the sting of that a little bit, but she should be proud of how she played regardless. But so do you want to talk? Well, so how about let's get into some highlights. Do you have a favorite moment?
Favorite moment.
You don't have
Um,
to pick just one. We can just
yeah,
spitball
I'm going back.
highlights.
I had to go back to my other notes though. So I think one of my favorite moments was, and again, I feel bad with everything. So we talked about Sarah, like the fact that just Tony's face when he found out that he was right, that Natalie had the idol, and then the scramble they all had to do, and everybody just had to like just start throwing
Yeah.
idols out there now. That
Yeah.
was kind of a fun tribal council, and where you started to see where Natalie might, how she was starting to make this case for herself because she blew them all up by having that thing,
Mm-hmm.
and Tony had been right,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And I think one of my favorite things associated with that whole little subplot is that afterwards, Tony, despite sometimes coming across as maybe a little bit like a hothead, um, kind of goes to them and he's kind of like, okay, guys, here's why I'm going to use my conflict resolution and de escalation skills to explain to you why I'm kind of pissed that you wouldn't listen to me. And now look what happened. I
yeah,
told you that I was pretty sure she was had an idol or something, and you insisted over and over. And I'm not trying to make this and I told you so. I'm trying to make it a listen to me. Because I
yeah.
was the one that was right, and you guys kept trying to persuade me that I was crazy. Yeah.
Well, it's part of an interesting thing about his character in general, that the sort of erratic and intense way that he plays this game and
Mm-hmm.
behaves in the game betrays how actually smart and reasonable
Yeah.
and rational he is, and and they got caught up in that too, just like we do as the audience, and then we're like, oh, well, it's just Tony being crazy, but it's like, no, he was thinking it through.
Yeah.
He wasn't just having this like weird impulse. Like, he's like, she has literally been over there since the beginning. She had all those advantages to get to beat all those people in the challenge. Like, there's a strong chance she's got some other stuff with her, guys.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
and the other thing about that was that just kind of made no sense to me is why were Ben and Sarah so convinced that she didn't? Because that seemed like I didn't understand why they were so sure.
Right. It was almost like they had decided because it was easier for them mentally
Mm-hmm.
than to
Yeah.
have to like flip votes and put Denise at risk and like all that stuff.
Well, yeah, that was exactly what Ben kind of explained is that like, well, we could split the votes, but I feel like I really like Denise. I don't want to make her nervous or worried or have hurt feelings because she ends up with votes when we really don't want her to get voted out. Of course, she ends up going anyway because they're wrong. And, uh, could they have split the votes in such a way? Well, yeah, although there was some serious game theory stuff going on there in terms of who might have an idle and playing for who and kind of, but ultimately it was just they seemed really sure, but I agree it was just they wanted that to be true, so they were just going to insist that it was.
Right. And I have to wonder, even just hearing you say that, like now, I hadn't thought of this at the time, how much maybe this is what influenced Ben, because it's like, this is what it's going to be like
Mm-hmm.
from now on. And I can't.
Yeah.
And that's part of why he didn't want to deal with it then, is because he was already starting to feel that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're probably right that that's part of what was going on there is that it was just getting harder and harder, that he was seeing, the relationships that he had made start to feel less like an asset and more like a liability. And he was worried that, like, I thought I had these alliances, but now I'm having to turn on them, and that just feels real bad. And I don't want to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the other thing I will leave in my favorite moments is I just absolutely love this ball challenge. Every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. I agree. I think it is a great final challenge because it's not physically difficult. It's just that focus and coordination.
Hmm.
Although I will, on a physical standpoint, say that I think Tony's decision to be on his knees was a mistake. Because on the one hand, it might be easier in some respects, but it's significantly sort of limits your mobility.
Yeah, you're much less quicker in a reaction time if
Yeah.
you have to have your cadence right.
Hmm.
Which on this one, like as much as you try, you're gonna miss one, and you have to. That's the only way you can make it through this is you have to have a couple of times where you make the mistake and you're quick enough to come up with it.
Hmm.
You can't have too many of those or you just get all screwed up. But you have to be ready for the one.
Yeah.
To get you back into the rhythm. Especially when they start. When there's more of them and the cadence starts to change a little bit. Um, and I think that's one of my favorite things about this is that just the way that it's designed with how many turns that they don't take the exact same amount of time each time.
Hmm.
Like if the ball is kind of rattling a little bit, it goes slower because of
Yeah.
how much is in there. So it's not. It's really really hard to time because if you get one in, you drop it in like with a little momentum and clean, and it starts rolling through, and then your next one kind of rattles around.
Yeah.
They don't come out at the same cadence
Well,
as what they went in. You
yeah,
know.
yeah, and the other thing about that I don't know for certain, but is my guess, is that of the two paths that alternate, one is actually a little bit longer than the other because that's designed to break up any sync that you might
Mm,
have. You
that
know
I
what
bet
I
that's
mean?
the case too. You're right. Yeah.
Because it would be easy to design that way and would make it substantially more complicated, which is, of course, the whole point. Just that, just because the ball was halfway down when you put in the next one doesn't mean that they stay at that timing.
Right.
And it
Right. It's
was
like it's not like you can do like a four count, put it in, catch it, and then on a four count, the other one's going to come out.
right,
You know?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, that's not how they're working. Yeah.
yeah,
But
um,
it's visually exciting. It's one of those ones where you like put yourself, where you try to put yourself in the would this be, and you kind of like you're in that mixture of like would this be fun to play or not because it seems
yeah,
kind of fun, but also just completely nerve wracking. At the
yeah.
same time when it's the final one, like yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, and
So
then
it's
Natalie
another
had a
level.
bunch
Yeah.
of fun, dramatic baubles where she almost dropped it, but then managed to recover.
Yep.
They showed us
Yeah.
several of those. When it comes to challenges, though, I want to give a shout out to the challenge with the water slide. Not just because the water slide was awesome, but just because the whole challenge with all those different pieces of it, I feel like was one of my favorite challenge designs in a long time.
Yeah. No, I
And
like that too. Yeah.
yeah, and then on top of that, that's, certainly a highlight moment for Michelle, right? Because like she's behind the whole way through, and it's just this drama of she's done that puzzle before, and when she did, she won. So she's starting on it last, but she's done it before, and she just blasts through it, putting the others to shame, and then wins. And I thought that was just amazing for her. It's like, and again, it was just you immediately see no one else has even got the first tier yet, and she's putting the circle on, and they're all just immediately start just looking at what she's doing.
Yeah. I was so happy for her right there because
Yeah.
I have a feeling that I mean maybe I don't have a feeling. I think that's who they were trying to target had she not won the immunity.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so, for her to come from behind like that and to just absolutely wax them on that thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
just like you said, they were you knew and this was my favorite part. I know we've discussed like the cheating and like getting this is one it doesn't matter. Like by the time you're looking at hers to try to figure out
Yeah.
how to solve yours, you're done. She's
Right.
too far ahead.
Like the only thing you can hope is that if you can manage to be as close behind her as possible, that if she accidentally knocks it over or something like that,
Right.
you're ahead of everybody else. That's really
Yeah.
all you can hope for because otherwise, watching what she's doing, you're not going to ever pull ahead. But then again, I mean, I think if the strategy for the different tiers is approximately similar, then just trying to get a sense of like, okay, well, how does this puzzle work, and now do it again. But you're right that it's the this sort of thing matters more on challenges where there's not just one winner.
Right. And also like just again the fact that like as she's moving up, like certain ones there's you can get some speed to it, but just like this one, like you just, I don't know. I don't know exactly why. It just, for whatever reason, I feel like this one, like you said, not just the one winner, but there's something else with it. Just as soon as you saw them all looking over, you're like, they can't beat her. They can't, because at this point, they're not even working to catch up. They're trying to match what she has,
Yeah.
and they just, she's going to always be too far ahead.
Well,
Even
and
if she struggles, she's going to have less things to work with at the end. So
it was just so dramatic because they had all been up there for a while, it felt like. And then when they all realized that even though she showed up last, she's the first to complete that first tier, it was just like, oh, this is bad for us. I mean, I guess we have to try to do the best we can, and
how did she do it?
Yeah, if you're behind, you're not going to catch up. You're not going to overtake her by looking, but also you're probably not going to win if you don't look either.
No.
So yeah, but I thought that whole challenge was very cool. Like, it's certainly one of the ones you could tell is physically exhausting, but just the water slide looked fun, and just the other obstacles and everything, and then kind of a cool, complicated puzzle. It required some, dexterity as well as smarts, and it was just exciting. A nice come from behind victory for Michelle. That was all good stuff. I mean, and then like there's just a lot of really dramatic challenges this time too, because like for example, Natalie, started with so many advantages on the battle back challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That when she started pulling behind, it was like, oh no, what's going on? Is it gonna is she gonna be able to pull it out? But just turns out that it's just one of those. It's in some ways I feel like it's a parallel issue to the question of should she have challenged Tony for the fire making, right? It's this idea of like, oh well, you wouldn't have won if you didn't have all those advantages. But we say she has the advantages because she did the things to earn them and then played them smart.
Yep.
So she used the things that she's great at to supplement the things where there's more challenge. And besides, honestly, it was really she was only behind because she got stuck on that one spot.
She got so jammed up on that thing. Yeah.
So otherwise, she probably wouldn't have been dropped behind as much. But yeah, like, so I feel like, to kind of revisit what I said earlier a little bit, is that although I feel like having to come back on a winners only season and say, no matter how dramatic it was coming back from Extinction Island, Edge of Extinction, trying to make the case that you should win when the first thing you did in the game was get voted out, that's a hard sell. But I feel like she sold me as well as anyone could have, I think. And I would not have been upset if she won, even though I personally still feel like Tony had the better case.
Yes. Well, this was one of those ones, I mean, I was rooting for Tony, but I honestly, like, if for like some random ass reason everybody had voted for Michelle, I wouldn't have been mad.
Yeah, I would have been surprised. But,
I would have been surprised.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been upset,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was good. And then, of course, we got, real emotional moments with everyone else when it was clear their game was over, and now, no more chance to get back in, just, just jury now.
So the other reason I end up really liking that, outside of just it was nice in the moment, mm-hmm. was when we couldn't have like a real reunion show. Mm-hmm. This gave us a little bit of what we like from that, which is just kind of like people reflecting on their experience in the game. And this would have been the kinds of things I would have wanted to hear from these guys in the reunion show anyway, as opposed to some of the more mundane stuff that sometimes happens in there. Like this is what you want, is like, hey, what does this game mean to you? What does it mean for you to have come back out here and given it this shot against all these best people? And what does it mean to go home right now? What have you learned? What has this game taught you? And that's what they basically did without the prompting. Like they're good enough at how to kind of process these emotions and kind of,
Hmm.
and Jeff asked a really open-ended question that allows them to kind of work through it each individually.
Yeah.
But we got literally everything that he could have coached out of an or a reunion show, out of this little experience, and that made me feel really good because it had they even done a reunion show, it would have been odd.
Yeah, well,
You know,
we can kind of see why they made the call to do what they like. It was a little bit weird that in one of the little interstitials, they like made a point of showing that they had everyone on this gigantic Zoom call or however they had it set up, but then they really didn't ever talk to anyone else again.
right.
So it was a little weird include them only for that moment where it's like, okay, everybody wave. Now we're not going to come back to you at all.
Yeah, and I can see why though that they didn't. I mean, that stuff is. I mean, it honestly, like this is gonna. You probably didn't watch the, but I bet they learned a lot from the NFL draft
Mm,
because that was done all virtually and via Zoom, and they had some segments that were supposed to be like multiple people and like larger things, and they don't work as well as just having a one-to-one interaction.
yeah.
Um, and and they probably, like I said, they probably learned a lot from that. And then also they had enough content that was good. Like this didn't feel like they were just trying to like create space,
Yeah.
to not have to have a reunion show. So I'm good with the call.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, well, and it's also probably true that when they had everybody on, there was, some discussion and conversation happening that, was just not broadcast, that, it was to kind of, for everybody, kind of be saying, hey, we know that this is all weird now, and you're not getting to do this reunion show that usually we do that gives everybody closure on a season, and we can't do that this time, and I'm sure that those almost always have big parties and stuff afterwards, right? And it's, again, we can't do that. So having everybody on to just kind of have everyone kind of just talk through, like, yeah, this sucks, but here we are. We're going to do the best we can. This is what we're doing. So,
Yeah,
I
and that's what I said. I think that to tie it back to this, let a lot of people have, like, the majority of the players got to have closure in this moment,
mhm.
as opposed to having to do it at the reunion show. So that made me really happy, like thinking back on it. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I read an interview with Jeff where he talked about, like one of his regrets for all of that was, again, just that for Natalie and Michelle, it was just a really abrupt finish of they're all sitting there live on camera with their family, hearing the votes read, and then they don't win, and then they're done, and that's it. And they're just now they're just now at home and everything's over. Instead
yeah,
of there normally being this whole big, hey, everybody's hugging, you're still on the stage, people are clapping for you, then you get to go to a big after party where all the other people who haven't won get to, commiserate with you, and like that's a very different, come down, I'm sure.
hmm so
Yeah. So let's see. I'm trying to think what else. I will confess what on camera now what I told you just before we started the stream, which is that I found that in the last hour or so, basically, uh, once we got to Tony and Sarah doing the fire making challenge, I kind of just stopped taking any notes. I was just absorbed with watching it, so I didn't note specific points. But on that basis, I will say I had never really emotionally engaged with Tony and Sarah as like an alliance before. Like, they told us they were, but mostly it seemed like they argued a lot. And so there was, to some extent, I didn't feel any emotional investment personally in the relationship between the two of them. But boy, there was some really good stuff there in the two of them being, made to do the fire making challenge together, and them practicing fire together, and Like they're both going to try. They're both trying really hard because they both want to win. But hey, they really respect and love each other a lot, and it's it was some good stuff. And I'll confess to being moved by that when I wouldn't have expected that.
No, that's good. I definitely was as well. I think I guess it didn't catch me by as much surprise as you, but it was. I guess maybe even to me, there was a little bit of a depth there that I wasn't really aware of. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
just because you don't see that a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really interesting for it to be that different, where they almost like helped each other, like they didn't really truly help each other practice, but like they kind of did, like they practiced together, and they had like their celebration at the beginning or end or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was nice. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to think like what other highlights we could get to before we talk about sort of the final tribal stuff. Um, Certainly, Tony won another immunity when it really mattered. So that was another good bit for him. Um, uh, we also got to see
In my
Tony.
water while you kind of go through that.
Okay.
I'll just be right off. Yeah.
Sure. We also got to see Tony going idol hunting at midnight by emberlight, making a little sort of sub campfire out in the middle of nowhere to have a little bit of light to do idol hunting even when it's dark. Um, and he doesn't end up finding it, but just, put what he's kind of going through. Although he talks about doing that so much, I can't help but wonder, like, is he just better able at getting actual rest when he does try to sleep? Um, you know what? Like it seems like he
Yeah.
did spend a lot more time not sleeping.
Yeah, I don't know if he just is able to like either like you said get really good rest on the nights he sleeps, or if he's good at sneaking naps and like kind of recovering that way, or however that works. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was funny though to kind of see him go through all of that and like all of that production to do it and how cool it was, and then Natalie just gets up in the morning and finds it.
Yeah.
you know,
Sometimes that's how it goes.
Yeah. And I mean, she's also very good. It's not like she's somebody who just stumbled into this idol,
Yeah.
but it was funny.
I was really excited for both Natalie and Michelle in that little sequence, though, just where they're realizing that now they have like an ability to accomplish some things that they didn't think they would otherwise. You
Yeah.
know, because we remember just last time how much in despair Michelle thought she was. After Nick kind of blew up what she had originally been planning to do, and just feeling like, well, what else are we supposed to do now? And just that's, but to have her be able to, you know, pull something else together because that's how she plays. Is she's constantly having to say, well, that plan didn't work. Now what? So that was fun. That she was able to connect with Natalie. Coming back and explain to her, it's like, no, I'm not with any of these people.
Right.
I am
Yeah.
100% on board to work with you, and nobody else will. But I'm happy to do it. Let's figure something out. So that one was lots of fun. Um, and yeah, so I think um, the one other thing that I'll maybe touch on a little bit. We talked a little bit already about Sarah's big speech wasn't obviously in the finale. About the gender thing, but the it was there was the fallout from it, right? Like the everyone giving their sort of reaction speeches in the next one, right?
Right.
And so and we had Probst talking about it, and Tony talking about it. How he sees it too, and this the gender stuff, um, and I noticed in that moment that there was a little bit of Ben wanting to join in that discussion, but really being pretty awkward about it. Like he sort of sees where the wind is blowing in that conversation, but doesn't seem like he really has the same sort of handle on exactly what the issue is as everybody else.
Right.
He, or at least he's less practiced at talking about it, just because, for example, Natalie plays her idol. Tony says, "I told you so," plays his own idol. And then when Ben plays his, he's like, speaking of strong, powerful women, my wife put something in my boot. And it's like the idol, and everyone's just kind of like, what? Okay.
I
We
forgot
weren't
about
actually
that.
just talking about strong, powerful women. That was earlier. And also, when we had that conversation, you pulled out the whole thing of like, yeah, women are our mothers, our daughters, our sisters. And it's kind of like a lot of people want to yell at the TV and say, they're also just human beings that don't have to be defined by their relationship to someone else.
Yes, God, yeah, I know. I do remember that part, and I think that's part of why I blocked off a lot of what Ben was saying in this one,
Yeah.
because once we went into that, and it's like that's like literally, it's almost like a meme now.
Yeah.
Of like
Well,
when you say like we should support women because there are all our daughters and our mothers, and it's
mm-hmm.
like no, no, we should support women because they're other human beings with agency and equivalency.
Yeah. Yeah. And so,
They're not defined by how they're related to the men in their life.
right. Like, and on the one hand, like, you feel like in wanting to educate people on these issues, that's a plateau that's higher than what some people are at, which is the feeling that the whole issue is stupid. Like, so to say, yeah, no, we should have be looking out for women and that sort of thing. But a lot of people just kind of stay there, which is why you want to call out that sort of language, is to say, well, hang on. What if a woman is not actually someone's mother or someone's wife? She should also still get respect. Um, and then he made that really awkward joke when he played his idol that just made no sense. And I couldn't help but feel like there was some of that in his decision that he made later. Like, just this sort of feeling like I have lost my hold on what's happening in the game now. The conversations have moved past me. People are not looking at me as a threat, and it's kind of just like recognizing I'm not in this now.
Yeah, I would say that's probably true.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think like it was obviously the exclusive thing, but I just mean I feel like even when he made that awkward joke, you could see it in his eyes that he knew it didn't land, and he was like, "Oh no, did I just make that even worse?" And the answer is yes, kinda, but not in a bad like mean way, but just sort of a, "Oh, come on, Ben."
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe put some deeper thought into this, and you don't have to always contribute some. If you can just listen and continue to learn about these things. You don't have to chime in if you're not prepared. But yeah, so, and again, I don't want to be like too hard on Ben, other than just like his part of that specific conversation wasn't great. And then it was also like when he sort of gave Sarah permission, I felt like it was a little passive aggressive still, because on the one hand, it's a little bit feeling like, well, what if she was already going to vote him out? Now he's making it feel like he gave
He
it
had
to
to
her.
give permission. Yeah.
But on the other hand, I was just thinking about it from Sarah's perspective of like, someone bares their neck to you in this game, you don't not go for it.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so for her to not take the opportunity would have been a mistake. And especially given, like on the one hand, I thought a little bit about it. Like, I didn't think Ben was likely to win anyway. I don't think he would have gotten any votes either. But, so it's a question of like, they were going to go for Michelle if she didn't take out Ben. So, from Sarah's perspective, would it have been better to keep Ben? But I think the answer ultimately is no, and the specific reason was he was really good at fire. You don't want to go against him in the fire making challenge.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
all
Um.
right.
So, uh, my my phone is making noises at me. So, uh, let's. Did you have any other highlights or things that you wanted to cover before we get to sort of the finals?
Nope.
All right. So, let's talk about the finals, even though like we're moving on to the part of the show that I literally have no notes on. But I don't know. Do we have a lot to say about it? We kind of talked through a lot of the biggest issues. I think.
Yeah. I don't,
Yeah.
yeah. And I gotta confess, I also don't have this very robust notes from the finals either because I think I was really drawn in by like watching them like
Mm-hmm.
just explain their what they how they did this and what their argument was, and because we're watching winners and they're getting questioned by winners,
Yeah.
it was all very on par with what you would want. Like there was no weird, awkward, like questions like I'm not going to vote for you, but I want you to answer this because like it'll make me feel better, kind
Yeah.
of thing.
No one was petty.
Right? There's none of that crap. It was all very, very, and so that's the thing. It's basically like Tony was out there trying to talk about how he was dominating the game from a strategy perspective, an aggressive perspective, a gameplay perspective. Like he was just outplaying everybody.
Yeah.
Michelle told the story about how she kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and she was always on the bottom. She was never part of the majority alliance, and yet she
Mm-hmm.
still made it all the way to the end, and won the immunities when it was absolutely critical. Even though she's not a big challenge threat, like she was able to muster it up.
Yeah.
And and Natalie talked about like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I got voted out early, but I lived on the edge with all of you, and I beat all of you.
Yeah.
I got way more advantages than all of you,
Even
and
though
I
she
came back
went out,
in. Yeah,
yeah, she went out first, but never stopped playing. She still continued to play as hard as she could from where she was, and the evidence is clear of that, of showing just how many fire tokens she ended up with, all of the different things that she sent back into the game, contributing to what was happening in the rest of the game, even from Edge of Extinction, and just accumulating 3 advantages and an idol and all of that. Like, she never stopped playing, whereas some of the other players, again, like, not, talking trash about anybody, but like, you could certainly understand why there would be a temptation on Edge of Extinction to sort of feel like, the pressure's off a little bit. Because,
right. Like we're just gonna chill here for the next 36 days, and then we see if we can get back in.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You know, and she didn't do that,
yeah,
and when she came back in, she found the crack, and I think there obviously her finding the idols were critical to all this happening, but the groundwork was laid when she came in and said, "Yeah, guys, jury's all going to vote for Tony." It showed that she was engaged from the second she stepped back in
yeah,
because she had been engaged out there, and that may or may not have been true, and unfortunately, nobody enough. I think he won immunity that first time.
yeah. Well, so,
No, no,
um,
Michelle won the first immunity.
yeah, Michelle won that first one, but Tony,
But he had the
that's
idol.
that
Yeah,
that was the one where Tony and Ben both played their idols, and all of the first votes were on Ben and Natalie, who didn't, none of those counted, so they had to do the revote between just
right. And then
Reese
he
and
did
Sarah.
win the next immunity.
Yeah,
And then the next one, she did put him into the fire making challenge. So yeah, I
right,
mean,
yeah,
she didn't really have an opportunity to get rid of him when she came back. But
right, yeah,
you know, she if they had had an opportunity, she had laid the groundwork to help make sure Tony got out of there to clear the way for herself. So I mean, she did such a great job with all that stuff, and and that's again that's all I really remember from that final tribal council is that it didn't betray the game that we saw and everything we've just been talking about. Their case and the questions that like elucidated their case were exactly those three things. Like,
mm-hmm.
and it was almost refreshing that you didn't have to take notes about, oh well, so and so is asking some dumb question because
Yeah,
you could tell they just want to do this or they're still butthurt for
Right.
getting voted out or whatever. It's like
So
none of that was in there. Just super smooth. Yeah.
yeah, I will continue to roll my eyes that even though I like the structure of the final tribal council better now, the lip service given to, oh, we're dividing it into outwit, outplay, and outlast because those are three different areas of the game in some sort of labored way. Um, I still resent that element of it. I just feel like it does not neatly break into those three things, and I feel like it's awkward every time they try to make it do that. But fortunately, this time they really didn't spend a lot of time on that, so I didn't, wasn't worried about it. It's just like I notice every time. One of the things that I found kind of really interesting with Natalie in that final was apparently, or at least from the the jury, they mentioned that like in the last week before that final battleback challenge, they felt her withdrawing socially, and that seems to have hurt the feelings of a few people there. And I wonder if that cost her some votes, but I really liked her answer about that, which is that like, I'm sorry if people's feelings were hurt. In a sincere way, because that obviously wasn't my intention, but I was dealing with my own pressure of, feeling how close that competition was and just caring about it so much that it was putting me in a headspace where it was harder to engage with everybody socially and just kind of owning that like that's me. I don't find that part easy, and I made an effort for more of the game this time, and I made some close relationships. But like when the pressure was on there, it was harder, and I wasn't as successful at that. And I'm sorry about that, but it was all because I was preparing myself mentally for that challenge. I thought that was interesting, and I resonated with me.
Yeah. No, I agree. So.
Yeah, and so I thought it was really interesting to have such different narratives for Tony versus Natalie in terms of each of them making their case, because it's like just by definition of how the game was structured, they had very different survivor experiences, right? It's like Tony's was the much more traditional one, whereas Natalie's there's really only ever been one other season that had the ability for there to be a narrative quite like this one. It just occurred to me also, actually, that maybe one of the reasons not to have gotten rid of Ben would have been that if you could have put Tony and Ben against each other in a fire making challenge, maybe that takes Tony out and Ben doesn't win.
Yeah, maybe.
But that's it's not even a hindsight is 2020 thing. It's a you have no way of knowing how that might have gone because it could have just as easily been a bad thing.
Right.
Right. You don't know who it is that's going to be putting up against him. But yeah, that's kind of a sidetrack. But yeah, in any event, I think just to, oddly enough, I feel like we've talked very little about Tony in this episode, of our podcast. We talked a lot about Natalie and Michelle and some of the other people, but I think it's just because we've already talked a lot about Tony, and he just continued to be who he is in this final, which is very compelling TV, constantly entertaining, seems like a fun guy to be around, and also extremely smart in the social and strategic parts of the game, and also really good at challenges. He excelled in every element of the game. He outwitted, outplayed, and outlasted, because those are three different things.
Yep. Yeah, he I think I've already said that the couple of things that I wanted to say about Tony in this one is that number one, he is an incredibly deserving winner in this season, where where he's competing against all the other winners. Like, you want the person who wins that to be somebody you're proud of in the season, and he was. I'm proud of him for winning it. I think he did it in a great way. I think that there was some great things that highlighted some of the subtler things about him, like the trying to get the vote split and being so sure, and his rationale. And then And then the way he handled himself when he was right and they were wrong, and they still had to go back to camp. Like these are things that you just don't normally feel like you're going to see from him in the way that he erratically plays this game, like with so much gusto. And I thought that was really great to see that there is this whole other layer to him that is super intelligent
Yeah.
and super socially aware, and that he truly, when he says, I play this way because I have fun,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the same thing as when we see people like, oh, well, I'm creating this strategy because it's what I always want. It's just what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like he legitimately recognizes the difference in how he acts in the game versus how he acts in real life,
Mm-hmm.
and chooses to behave that way because he enjoys himself doing it.
Yeah, he is fun to watch because of how transparent and genuine it is that he is having a good time playing this game. He's good at it, and he knows he is, and it's a lot of fun for him, and it makes him fun to watch.
Right, and then you see, like, when he gets to the end and he does win, there's just such a sense of gratitude that he's being rewarded for doing something well that he really enjoys.
Mm-hmm.
And had he not won, I don't think he'd be bitter. Like, he just has so much fun being out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. He seems like a really great guy, and he's he played extremely well, compelling TV. It's who I'm sure there are people out there who wanted someone else to win, but it just, like, I keep coming back to the fact that both you and I have been on the same page for weeks and weeks now. Tony's playing a hell of a game. They better get rid of him or else he's going to win. And then they didn't, and he did.
Yeah. And I mean, this has got to be the last game he plays. I mean, there's no way. I mean, he's in the same boat as somebody like a Rob or a Parvati right now, where it's like, if he goes on another season, like, they're going to he won the Winners at War. Like, they're going to get rid of him early. Like, you don't keep that guy around.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, I could almost see it in just like, if they want to have him back, I mean, sure, he'd be a big target, but he would also go in knowing that,
Yeah, he'd go with some.
I
yeah,
did this already, and if you guys
yeah.
want to take me out, all right. But I'm going to have fun while it lasts. I could see that.
Yeah, I could see that. I guess I wouldn't put much. It's gonna, just like it took a lot to get Rob back on. It took this being, it took being the first time that only winners competed to get Rob to even come back on. Like it. I don't see them doing another one of these because of how great this was. Like, I would hope they don't try to, like, make this a thing that they do every couple of seasons. So I just, I mean, I think it's probably the last time we see a lot of the people that we saw in this one.
Yeah.
Not last time we see them, but seeing
them. I was a little sad to see that like the note Rob went out on was kind of criticizing Natalie for not having gone against Tony in fire making, because I'm not sure I agree with him. Like, I can see the point he's making in the sense of, like, if you need him to take him out because you don't think you can win against him, then you need to do everything you can, and it doesn't do you any good to be in the final three if it's against him. And, like, I can see that argument, but also, like, would he still have been saying that she made the wrong decision if Sarah had won that challenge? That fire making challenge?
Yeah, it's hard to tell, huh? Yeah.
I feel like Natalie made a call based on what she saw as her best options, and I'm not. I feel like you could debate whether or not, like, what would have been different if she had gone against him. But, like, if she had gone against him and lost, that's not a better result than this.
Yeah, and it is tricky too, because, like, we can armchair survivor it and say, like, okay, that makes sense, but I felt like she made a compelling argument as to why she didn't.
Yeah.
I think that the dismantling of the alliance thing is equally as valid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Also, as an armchair survivor, if I'm sitting there and I've seen everything I can see, and I have a vote, I'm voting for Tony anyway. even if Natalie had beaten. Well, I guess no. Well, sorry. If Natalie had beaten Tony in the fire making,
Right, then he would not have been in the final,
who would
and
have
it would
been
have
there.
been
I would have voted
Sarah,
for Sarah.
Michelle, and Natalie.
Right. I would have voted for Sarah in that case. Um, Not Natalie, I think, because I think
Hmm. No, I'm just thinking about it because I hadn't really considered that, so I'm not questioning you. I'm just considering that. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I did like Sarah. I guess maybe I was just sort of one like I was saying earlier. Natalie sort of won me over with her case more than I would have expected.
right. Well, think about it almost in the flip side though. That
Mm-hmm.
is to what you were saying is so. Let's say Sarah beats Tony and
Mm-hmm.
she's not in there. Well, now Sarah has played the entire game, has done all these moves, and beat Tony, the biggest threat in
Yeah.
the fire making challenge.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think I would have given Sarah the win in that circumstance.
Mm-hmm. So Natalie was just in a really tough spot either way.
Yeah.
Like it's
Well, right.
and
Like,
at
I
your
mean,
point, there's also the chance that she doesn't beat Tony, and then she doesn't even have a chance to make the
yeah,
case.
exactly, exactly. Because I think if she had gone against Tony and won, I don't. I feel like that might have been enough to give her the edge on for with a couple of people. Like Rob seemed like the way he talked about it. He seemed to be saying like that's what would have put you over the edge for me. But but I don't know. I feel like that would have been a daring, bold thing that maybe like if she won, then that looks really good because she made a daring bet and it paid off. But yeah, I mean, I think if she goes against him and then loses, and especially if he beats her like solidly, then everyone's just going to feel like, well, that was dumb. Why did she do that?
Right. So, well, and here's another piece to consider that it took me a little bit to kind of reflect on is that it she needed a lot more votes than it felt like
Mm-hmm.
because she got 4 votes, which in a normal finale would be a lot of votes,
Mm-hmm.
but there were 16 votes.
Yeah.
So she lost 12-4. That's a lot of people you got to convince.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and I don't know that just winning a fire making challenge does that. So I think we are a little bit like there's a little skewed reality to that because they only read 9 votes, which is a
Mm-hmm.
normal,
Right.
you know. But there were 16 votes, so there were after he stopped reading, 7 more people voted for Tony.
Yeah. 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 So I obviously it
And I'm not using it in an argument with you. I'm
right.
just saying that was something
Well,
that I didn't even consider until
yeah.
early. Is that as well as Natalie did, she still had a long way to go, longer than it seemed at
Well,
first.
right, but I think that's where it comes down to, like Rob's point is that Tony was so dominant that from his
Yeah,
perspective, he's saying everyone's going to vote for Tony to win if they can. And literally the only way for Tony not to win is if he's not there. So if you're not doing every single possible thing you can do to keep him from being there, then then you have failed. Although, like, that fails to take into account the idea that what if Natalie thinks that Sarah is better chance to take Tony out at the fire making than she does? Like,
yeah,
if playing the odds is like, if the goal is to take Tony out, I think Sarah has a better opportunity to do that than I do.
yeah. Except she never did. She never used that as her argument. Not to
Yeah.
say that it wouldn't have been the case, but that was never her point. Her point was always,
Mm-hmm.
I decided that this was my narrative was to take their alliance out. This way, I ensured by putting the last 2 alliance members against each other, I
Mm-hmm.
ensured that they were decimated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was fair. It wasn't enough. I don't know that winning the fire would have been enough either, but it
Yeah.
would
No,
have put her in a
yeah.
better spot. Yeah.
Like, I think the thing is that it comes back to the thing with Sarah is that I like Sarah and I think she's right, but I think it's also true that for good reasons or bad, I don't think she had the jury on her side the way Tony did. So, unfair or not, I don't think she gets rewarded in the same way if she's there instead of Tony.
That's fair. Yeah. Well,
And I'm not even saying that's the way it should be. I'm just saying that's what I think would have happened. I mean, because that was the whole issue of, why she was mad when she heard from Natalie was saying, like, Tony and I have been like this the whole time. How how is everyone only paying attention to Tony there? That's frustrating. But it's also, now that that's being pointed out, doesn't, just pointing out that it's unfair doesn't make it not true anymore.
yeah, fair.
Yeah.
True.
Anyway, though, hard to say. That's one of the natures of Survivors, that sometimes you have to make choices and you don't know what would have happened if you'd gone the other way. So, but I think we had a pretty great season and a deserving winner, and who knows when next season is going to be. You know,
I mean, they'll just like everything. It's being innovated right now. Like as soon as they are able to get a season together, like they're going to produce it as fast as possible. You have to imagine.
Well, and the other thing is that obviously there are certainly really dramatic challenges for that right now, but in some respects, Survivor is almost uniquely suitable for, you take the cast and the crew and the players and you quarantine them all for 2 weeks, and then assuming everybody's good, you ship them all off to Fiji and they just don't actually interact with anyone else while they're doing their thing, and then they come back.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of sports that restarted today, like NASCAR and the MMA and stuff has been going on, and they've been working in these bubbles. I mean, Survivor is like the ultimate like bubble show, As long as you, like you said, you get everybody there and like I said, you quarantine them, you test them,
make sure no one's sick before you go. Yeah, but
yeah. So yeah, I mean, you're right. It's probably one that can come online quicker as soon as it's like also the right thing to do. Like you also don't want to be, producing these kinds of things when, it's you're taking unnecessary risks. So I mean, I think it's something that easily, if things, I think it'll come back sooner than we think.
right.
And they'll produce it. Their post production will get to work immediately, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they were producing a season on air that was in line with one that was still being filmed. That wouldn't shock me if it came to that.
Oh, like literally, like start airing it even while they're still out there?
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me if it came to that. I don't know that they would need to do that, but
yeah, I mean, in theory they could, but that seems really risky to me. Of like, you don't know what's going to happen, and like something goes horribly wrong. You don't want to have started building the wrong sorts of narratives.
Yeah. But that's where we're at right now.
I mean, those are some of the hard decisions they're having to make. So we'll find out when you guys do what's gonna happen for the next season. But whenever that comes, take care of each other until then.
Yep. Thanks everybody for listening and or watching.
Yep. Good night, everyone.
Good night.